Hi there everyone, this is Howie from epokervideo.com, and today I'm going to be playing a single table no limit hold'em sit and go. We're just going to discuss various strategies as far as playing. It's just a $6 sit and go, so you should have a fair amount of weak passive players. Okay, here we have our first playable hand. It's a king queen offsuit. Basically, in these turbo sit and goes, they're gonna basically split into three areas. You have early on in the tournament when the blinds are really small compared to the size of your stack. Then you have the kind of the midpoint when a couple guys have got knocked out and the stacks, the blinds tend to get a little bit bigger in relation to the size of your stack. And then you have kind of the later stages when there's 3 to 5 players left. The blinds are really big, and you basically are going to be all in most of the time pre-flop if you're going to be raising. So early on in the stage one area, which is what we're in now, I play a little bit more passively and a little bit looser, where I'll limp in more hands that are speculative and try and hit big flops, again, while the blinds are still relatively small. The reason for this is because stealing the blinds aren't as beneficial at this stage of the game, simply because it's not going to be increasing your stack very big to, steal $45 when you start with 1500. But in the middle stages, obviously, stealing blinds becomes much more effective and much more important than in the early stages, because again, it will increase the size of your stack significantly. Here we have ace king. We did raise it pre-flop, got 2 callers, bet the flop with king king 4, got 1 caller. I'm going to underbet a little bit on the turn. Obviously, it's not a great turn card for us. With a third diamond coming on, it's unlikely that he will. The board is such that he's either going to have a king or have a flush draw. There's not really a lot of other draws that could be out there. Unless he's just calling with a 4, which, I mean, at these stakes is entirely possible. Let's just look back on the hand. So he had pocket 10s there, no diamond. So he did manage to call a flop bet and the turn bet with under pair, a mid pair to the board, and we got pretty lucky that he didn't happen to have the 10 of diamonds. But again, that's a situation where at these stakes there's no sense slow playing, even though we did flop, top trips, top kicker. Again, with weak, loose players, they will be calling down very light, so we need to get maximum value when we do flop a hand. So getting back to the stages, the first stage of the tournaments, obviously we're going to be limping in a little bit more with speculative hands like small pocket pairs, small suited cards, if the table dictates that we can do so. If there's a lot of raising pre-flop, we still can't be limp folding too much. But if it's the kind of table, as a lot of these are, where you can get away with getting in and seeing a lot of cheap flops, then early on in the tournament is definitely a time to do it. Then once the blinds get above about 25-50, here I'm just going to raise quite a bit because there's been 2 limpers and I'm out of position. So I really want to get heads up, hopefully with just one opponent. With a hand like kings, you definitely don't want to run it against a lot of people. And here, obviously the pot is bigger than the size of my opponent's whole stack, so I will just put him in on this flop. He'll obviously be calling me if he has a 10 or a flush draw, which he does have. So we will see if our kings hold up, which they do. So we've down to 8 players now. So early on, as I said, when the blinds are still relatively small, we're going to be playing a hand like king 10 suited. I will be limping this in if it's not raised. And then once the blinds get to about, I'd say over about 5% of your total stack, then I will switch basically into a tag format where I'm going to be quite tight and very aggressive. If I'm the first one in, I'm always going to be raising. I'm not going to be limping in a lot, and I'm going to be really attacking the blinds and just trying to build my stack that way. And then once you get to kind of the third stage, where there's usually about 4 or 5 players left, the blinds are relatively high, I get a little bit looser and much more aggressive in that players often who are playing these really want to make the top 3, obviously, because that's where the money is. So when you get into that situation, you can really kind of pound on the tight players who are trying to make the money and really build your stack at that stage of the tournament. So those are kind of the three stages. We're just exiting the first stage, I guess, because the blinds are now at 25.50. I'm not going to be doing as much open limping as I would have earlier on in the tournament. Okay, we're dealt pocket fours with one limper, and we basically, because the blinds are now at 25.50, if I'm going to play this hand at all, I'm going to be raising with it. My goal here is to basically isolate against the open limper, hopefully get the blinds to all fold, and basically if he ended up folding, so that's a great result obviously, but if he called, I'm hoping that one continuation bet on the flop should be able to take down the pot. If the blinds were smaller still, like 15-30 or 20-40, I'd be much more likely to limp in those pocket fours and attempt to flop a set and build my roll that way. But since the blinds are now at 25.50, they're definitely worthwhile to be stealing. Alright, here we are in the small blind with the premium hand, ace-jack offsuit, folded around to us. So we're just going to raise just against the big blind. Again, I will fairly aggressively attack the big blind when I'm in the small and it's folded around. It is a little bit of a tough spot because he will be out of position, but for the most part, you can gauge pretty early on whether your big blind, the player to your left, is going to be tight or loose. And again, here with pocket fours, it's folded around. I'm just going to go ahead and raise 3 times the big blind, and again steal the blinds, which are now at 30-60, which is definitely worthwhile to be stealing. Alright, so we're now about 15 minutes into the sit and go. We've had a couple players eliminated. We've been able to really focus on some of the tendencies of our opponents, and we got some notes on some of the players. M. Fussy appears to be a fairly straightforward, aggressive player, and there's a lot. River one man, very passive. Stony solid, also very passive, limps in a lot. So we were able to get a feel for how our opponents are going to play, because that's important once we get down to 3 and 4 handed, being able to have a read on our opponents so that we can maximize our profits when we are playing them later on. Here we just completed with 8-9 offsuit just against the big blind. We did fire one bullet on ace king 5 board. We know that he is very passive, but also very loose, so we don't want to bluff at him, but we also know that we can definitely get in cheaply when he's in the big blind, and we should be able to get a lot of value when we do make some hands. So here I would say we're now in kind of the middle stage of the tournament. We're down to 6-handed, and the blinds are now at 60-120. So we're basically going to be playing fairly straightforward and aggressive. We're going to be kind of focusing on continuing to put pressure on the blinds, especially the blinds that are kind of medium stacks in position. And you can see we are kind of at the point now where some of the short stacks are going to be shoving quite often. So we'll see how it goes from here on out. So it is kind of nice that we have the chip leader. We know that he's fairly passive,